Our most recent federal election focused mainly on tariffs and the U.S. trade war, which moved environmental issues to the back burner.
Move forward, and we will change things at the federal level that need to be changed in order for projects to move forward.
Does that include C69 or the emissions cap?
It could include both. Absolutely could include both.
Prime Minister Mark Carney killed the consumer carbon tax before votes were even counted, and now peeling back certain climate protections to build pipelines is something he did reveal in an exclusive interview with Vash Kapelas at CTV News. You were just watching some of it there. So what does this mean for our environmental targets? Joining us with more this morning is Byron Williston. He's a member of the Waterloo Climate Institute. Welcome to your morning.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
So Canada, we know, has two main climate-related targets. One is to slash emissions by 40% from 2005 levels by 2030. The second is to reach net zero emissions by 2050. How are we faring on those goals before this last election took place?
Not terribly well. So yeah, as you say, there's the dual goal there. First, to cut emissions 40 to 45% below 2005 levels by 2030, and then secondly, the net zero target set out to 2050. We had not been on target to meet those goals. In fact, the policies and actions currently in place would take us to a 3 degrees Celsius world by the end of this century. So just to keep these temperature targets in perspective here, the whole point of the emissions reductions targets is for us to help us meet our Paris Agreement goals, which is to keep global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius relative to that pre-industrial baseline. So we're on track with the current policies, we're on track for double that. That's a catastrophic temperature rise, 3 degrees and above, and catastrophic not just for Canada but for the whole world.
So that's where we were sitting heading up to the election, but I know you're following this closely. Prime Minister Carney positioning Canada as a leader in clean and conventional energy. There's also talk now of creating and expediting a national energy corridor. What's your reaction to those moves?
Well, I mean, in one way, I don't think one is being over cynical. Given the past 30 years or so of climate policy at the federal level especially, I don't think it's overly cynical to be a little bit suspicious when you hear a government saying that we're going to meet our climate targets as well as continue to build ourselves as a petrostate. That is the line that we've been getting for, again, roughly 30 years, and we've almost always failed to meet our climate reduction or carbon emission targets because of it, right? It's a circle that we're trying to square. We're trying to have it both ways, and the rhetoric that we're getting from the new government sounds a lot the same. That's not to say that there aren't the sort of policy tricks up the Carney government's sleeve that could allow them to actually do this. And it's very early days, you know, Mark Carney has an extraordinary amount of experience as UN envoy to fight climate change for years and years. So on this file, right? So you know, there are reasons for some cautious, at least, optimism on that front. But again, our default assumption here, given the last 30 years, should be suspicion.
But as you and I both know, being an envoy and being a prime minister are two very different roles with different people to answer to. There's this feeling that we can't seem to catch a break economically. First, there was inflation, then interest rates rose, and now we are dealing with tariffs. What do you gauge as the appetite for policies that focus on the environment right now?
I think appetite is a very difficult thing to gauge, and that we should be aware of the assumptions about appetite for transformative change. If it can be made clear to people that you know, the policies that we currently have are bringing us to closer to a 3 degrees Celsius world, and perhaps even 4, that's the temperature rise, and that's a catastrophic outcome, then I think people might be prepared to make fairly significant sacrifices in order to avoid it. I mean, one of the things that encouraged me, at least, in the kind of the run up to this election and during the campaign itself, was the extent to which this language of sacrifice, you know, it was there, right? Like, even the former Prime Minister Stephen Harper came out and said, you know, that if there were if he were Prime Minister and there were significant threats to sovereignty, he would be willing to endure any amount of pain. I think that's a paraphrase of what he said, but that was basically it. Any amount of pain in order to deal with that particular threat. So that's an extraordinary thing for a former prime minister, especially that one, to actually say. So if you know, like, climate change, in the view of a lot of us, is a war. In wartime, people make sacrifices. And so if we can couch it that way, if we can think of it that way, which is what it actually is, I do think that we might be surprised at the extent to which people are willing to make material sacrifices in order to meet the challenge.
Byron Williston, member of the Waterloo Climate Institute. Great to have you on this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.